Hello, everyone, and welcome to Introduction to Interiors, Course INTD 1374 here at Wade College with Professor Medina. I'm Ava, your AI-generated guide for this session, and I'll be guiding you through this course. In this session, we'll explore the principles and elements of design, the foundation for everything you'll do as an interior designer. Think of these concepts as the building blocks of your creative process. Once you understand how they work, you'll be able to apply them in any space, whether residential or commercial. This course is all about developing your eye for design, sharpening your critical thinking, and connecting history, creativity, and function in meaningful ways. Along the way, we'll look at examples, practice applying these concepts, and learn how they show up in both the past and today's interiors. Whether this is your very first design course or you've taken others before, this is the place where we set the stage for your journey as a designer. So get ready to take notes, ask questions, and think about design in new ways. We are all excited to have you here, and our entire academic team looks forward to seeing how your ideas take shape throughout the trimester. Let's dive in and begin. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Design. Principles and Elements of Design. Part 2 of 2. But before we begin, I want to let you know that you can follow along with a PDF copy of this presentation. To access it, go to our classroom in Microsoft Teams, click on Files, then Presentations, and select the file titled INTD-1374. Chapter 1, The Foundation of Design, Part 2. But the elements and principles of design are like your toolbox and your rulebook for creating art or designing spaces. The elements are your basic ingredients, things like form, pattern, texture, color, light, and scale. These are what you use to actually build a design. The principles, on the other hand, are the guidelines for how to arrange those ingredients so everything works well together. They include proportion, balance, rhythm, hierarchy, and unity. Think of it like cooking. The elements are your ingredients, and the principles are the recipe that shows you how to mix them. So, when you put all or some of these ingredients into the pot and follow the rules, you end up with something that not only looks good, but also feels organized, balanced, and meaningful. To help you remember them, here's a food-friendly shortcut. For the elements, think: fresh pasta tastes creamy, light, and saucy. That stands for form, pattern, texture, color, light, and scale. For the principles, think: perfect burgers require healthy utensils. That's proportion, balance, rhythm, hierarchy, and unity. So just like a recipe, when you put the right ingredients together and follow the right steps, you'll create a design that's both delicious to the eye and meaningful in its structure. Now that we've got the big picture, let's dive deeper, first into the elements individually and then into the principles. Let's start with form, which is basically the shape or geometry of a space or object. At its most basic level, form is defined by four things: point, line, plane, and volume. A point may seem tiny. It's just a small location in space, like a dot. But in design, points can come together to create something bigger. Think about a point as a starting place. When points connect, they can create nodes, intersections, or even furniture arrangements in a space. A point can be something epic in scale, like the crossing of city streets, or something very detailed, like the stitching on upholstered furniture. Now, one of the most powerful elements of design connected to form is the line. A line is simply a point in motion, and it can be straight or curving. Lines can run vertically, horizontally, or diagonally, and each one carries a different feeling. Vertical lines make a space feel taller, while horizontal lines can give a sense of stability or calm. Diagonal lines can add tension, drama, or energy. Curved lines, or arcs, feel softer and more fluid and organic, often guiding the eye gently through a space. Designers also use organizing lines, which are really important for planning. These help align objects, create paths for circulation, or establish a sense of order in a room. For example, lines might define the usable area of a furniture cluster or separate one part of a room from another. This connects to negative space and positive space. Negative space is the open area around furniture or objects, while positive space is where the objects themselves sit. Together, they shape how a room feels and functions. So, form and line are not just shapes on paper, they're powerful tools that define how we experience and move through built environments. Now that we've seen how form and point can anchor a space, like the fireplace in this room, it's time to look at how designers bring energy and repetition into their work. That's where pattern comes in. Pattern is all about repeated elements, whether it's shapes, lines, colors, or textures that create rhythm and visual interest. Just like music has a beat, a pattern in design gives the eye something consistent to follow. Let's dive into how patterns are used to enhance interiors. On the last slide, we looked at form, the shape or geometry of a space or object, and how points and lines come together to create structure and focus in a room. Remember, in our example, the fireplace acted as the point that anchored the entire space. Now, let's move into pattern. Pattern is created when a geometry, or a combination of shapes, is repeated in a regular way. Think of it like a visual rhythm, something your eyes can follow across a surface. Patterns can be simple or complex, and they can feel very dynamic depending on how close or far you are when viewing them. We see patterns all the time in textiles, like rugs, curtains, and upholstery, where repeated shapes or motifs are woven into the fabric. They can also appear in architectural details, like tile work, wood paneling, or even the layout of bricks. Beyond decoration, patterns can hold cultural meaning, like Celtic argyles or the intricate designs of Islamic art and architecture. In a space, pattern can be used to add energy with bold repetition, guide the eye across a surface, or even create balance and harmony when paired with solid areas of calm. So while form gives us the structure, pattern gives the design movement and personality. We've seen how pattern brings rhythm and repetition into a space, giving it energy and cultural meaning. But design isn't just about what we see, it's also about what we feel. That brings us to our next element, texture. Texture is all about the surface quality of materials, whether something feels rough, smooth, soft, hard, shiny, or matte. In interiors, texture can create depth and warmth, making a space feel more inviting and dynamic. We have looked at form, the geometry and shape of objects, and how points and lines can anchor a design. We have also looked to see that pattern happens when a shape or geometry is repeated. It creates a sense of rhythm, almost like music for the eyes. But design isn't only about what we see, it's also about what we experience. That brings us to texture. Texture can be defined in two ways: visual texture, which is how something looks, and tactile texture, which is how it feels to the touch. Sometimes it's easy to confuse pattern and texture because both involve surfaces. But here's the difference. Pattern is intentional and repeated, while texture can feel more natural, random, and varied. Texture is powerful because it works on multiple levels. A shaggy rug or fluffy throw pillow instantly makes a living room feel warm and cozy, while smooth glass, polished marble, or sleek metals make a space feel modern and clean. Rough brick walls or raw wood beams bring in a rustic, natural character, while soft drapery and upholstery fabrics add comfort and elegance. Beyond looks and touch, texture also changes how a space behaves. It can affect acoustics by reducing echoes or muffling sound, change light reflection by making a surface glossy and reflective or matte and muted, influence mood since smooth surfaces feel sleek and formal, while layered textures feel welcoming and relaxed, and even impact upkeep since highly textured surfaces often collect more dust or require special maintenance. So, while pattern gives our eyes something to follow, texture makes spaces feel real and lived in. It's what makes a room inviting instead of flat. And now that we've explored both pattern and texture, it's time to move into one of the most powerful design tools of all, color. Color doesn't just change how a space looks, it can completely shift the mood, the energy, and even the behavior of the people inside it. Next, we'll explore how designers use color to create atmosphere, harmony, and meaning. Now that we've reviewed the form, pattern, and texture, let's shift our focus to one of the most powerful and recognizable, color. Color can be expressed in two ways, as substance and as light, and the two act very differently from one another. When we talk about color as substance, we describe it in terms of hue, value, and chroma. Hue is the category of a color, such as red, blue, or yellow, the terms we use in everyday language when we say color. Value refers to how light or dark a color appears. Adding white creates a tint like lavender from violet, while adding black creates a shade like navy blue. Chroma tells us how saturated a color is. A bright, vivid red has high chroma, while a toned-down grayish red has low chroma. In contrast, color as light comes from the visible spectrum explained through science. Each color corresponds to a wavelength. Red is the longest, violet is the shortest. Together, these create the rainbow we see when light passes through a prism or raindrops. In this model, the primary colors are red, green, and blue, forming the RGB system we still use in digital design today. Overall, color is one of the most easily recognized elements of design, and it has tremendous impact on how we perceive and experience spaces. And remember, this is just the beginning. In Chapter 2, we'll dive deeper into color theory, exploring how designers use color relationships and psychology to influence mood and function. With this foundation in place, we're ready to move into its essential partner, light, because without light, color could not exist. Now that we've explored color, let's move into its essential partner, light. Light affects all of the prior elements of design in some way. The most obvious example is that without light, form, pattern, texture, scale, and color would not even be visible. The way we experience a space is directly impacted by how it is lit. Too little light can create unsafe conditions, while too much can cause eye strain or even physical discomfort. On the other hand, light that is overly uniform may lead to a sense of boredom or weariness within a space. Lighting can be natural, coming directly or indirectly from the sun, or electric, provided by light fixtures. Electric light is generally grouped into 3 categories. Ambient lighting, sometimes called general lighting, which provides overall illumination for circulation. Accent lighting, which highlights a particular feature, such as a painting on the wall or jewelry in a retail display. Task lighting, often focused and functional, like an adjustable lamp on a desk or bedside table. Whether natural or electric, excellent lighting design can do much more than simply make a space visible. It can call attention to circulation paths, accentuate textures and patterns, highlight specific forms, and ensure accurate perception of both scale and color. Most importantly, good lighting creates an environment that is safe, efficient, and comfortable for its occupants. And just like with color, this is only an introduction. We'll take a deeper dive into lighting design in Chapter 10, where we'll study its science, psychology, and advanced applications in much greater detail. Now that we've illuminated the role of light in design, let's turn to our final element, scale, which helps us understand proportion, size, and how spaces feel in relation to the human body. Now that we've illuminated the role of light in design, let's move to our final element, scale. Scale refers to the size of a space or object in comparison to what we would expect it to be, usually measured against an accepted standard like the human body. For example, most of us expect a residential doorway to be about 6 feet 8 inches tall. If you walk up to a doorway that is 10 feet high, it feels monumental or grand precisely because it breaks our expectation of scale. Everyday objects within the built environment, stairs, countertops, doors, furniture, storage, and railings, are designed with the scale of the human body in mind. When scale is intimate, spaces feel snug and closely fitted to one or a few occupants. When scale is monumental, the human form feels small or even dwarfed within the space, creating a sense of awe. The key consideration of scale is always comparison. Most often, we compare to the human form, but scale can also be measured against objects in the same space. For instance, a massive light fixture over a small table feels out of scale. Designers sometimes use this intentionally to create hierarchy or emphasis within a design. Scale can also apply to drawings. In architectural practice, we use a mechanical scale, where measurements on paper translate to real-world units, like 1/4 inch equaling 1 foot. Without these scalable drawings, design would be nearly impossible to interpret and construct. So, scale is about more than just size. It's about relationship. Whether intimate or monumental, in real space or on paper, scale defines how people interact with and experience the built environment. We've now explored all of the elements of design, the essential building blocks that shape every space. Let's do a quick recap. Form gives us the structure and shape. Pattern provides rhythm and guides the eye. Texture adds depth and tactile interest. Color sets mood and emphasis. Light makes all other elements visible. And scale relates everything back to proportion and the human body. To help you remember these, think of our mnemonic device. Fresh pasta tastes creamy, light and saucy. F stands for form. P stands for pattern. T stands for texture. C stands for color. L stands for light. S stands for scale. These elements are like the ingredients in a recipe. You need them to build a design, but ingredients alone don't make the dish. That's where the principles of design come in. The principles are the rules or guidelines that help us combine these elements in a way that creates order, balance, and beauty. They include proportion, balance, rhythm, hierarchy, and unity. In our next section, we'll explore each of these principles and see how they bring harmony and structure to the elements we've just learned. Now that we've covered the elements of design, we're ready to move into the next part of our foundation, the principles of design. Remember, the elements are like the ingredients, but the principles are the rules that tell us how to combine them to create something balanced, functional, and visually pleasing. To help you remember the 5 principles, use our mnemonic device. Perfect burgers require healthy utensils. P stands for proportion, B stands for balance, R stands for rhythm, H stands for hierarchy, U stands for unity. Let's begin with the first principle. Proportion. Proportion refers to the size of an object or space in relation to itself, rather than to an outside standard. It has a tremendous impact on how we perceive spaces and how they make us feel. For instance, a room with a very low ceiling and tight footprint might feel confined or even stressful, while a vast cathedral with soaring ceilings inspires awe and freedom because of its lofty proportions. Throughout history, designers and architects have studied ideal proportions. The Greeks used the golden mean, Renaissance designers built with the Fibonacci sequence, and in the 20th century, architect Le Corbusier created the modular scale based on the human body. Each of these systems was meant to achieve harmony and balance through mathematical proportion. But proportion isn't always about perfection. Sometimes designers deliberately distort proportion, such as using an oversized chair or a massive light fixture, to make a dramatic statement or draw attention to a feature. The elements of design that most directly contribute to proportion are form, scale, and light. And as we continue, we'll see how proportion connects to the other principles in powerful ways. So, as we've seen, proportion is all about how the size of spaces and objects relate to each other and to the human experience. It sets the tone for whether a space feels confined, comfortable, or grand. Now, once proportions are established, the next principle naturally comes into play: balance. Balance is about how those proportions, forms, colors, and textures are arranged within a space to create stability and harmony. Just like proportion can make us feel at ease or overwhelmed, balance ensures that no single part of the design overpowers the rest. Let's dive into how balance works and the different ways designers achieve it. Now, once proportions are established, the next principle naturally comes into play: balance. Balance gives a space its sense of stability and equilibrium. It ensures a design feels intentional and complete, instead of lopsided or chaotic. Balance can be achieved horizontally by arranging furniture and objects evenly across a room, or vertically by carefully considering the heights and forms of walls, fixtures, and surfaces. Textures, colors, and lighting also play a huge role in how balance is perceived. There are 3 main strategies to achieve balance. Symmetry, arranging identical elements on either side of an axis, like a mirror image. This type of balance feels formal, stable, and often traditional. Asymmetry, creating balance with differences in size, color, or placement. This approach is more dynamic, flexible, and modern, but also harder to achieve successfully. Radial balance, arranging elements around a central point, like a circular dining table with chairs, or a chandelier radiating light in all directions. With any of these approaches, balance ensures that no single part of the design overwhelms the rest. Instead, the space feels harmonious and comfortable. But balance alone isn't enough. If every space were perfectly balanced and still, it would lack energy and direction. That's where our next principle comes in: Rhythm. Rhythm brings movement into design. It guides the eye, creates flow, and establishes a sense of progression. Just as rhythm in music gives us a beat to follow, rhythm in design uses repetition, alternation, and gradation to keep a space visually engaging. Let's dive into rhythm and see how it transforms stillness into flow. Next, let's explore the principle of rhythm. Rhythm evokes a sense of movement as the eye traces elements of a design through a space. Just like music can have a steady beat or a dynamic flow, rhythm in design can be very regular, like a repeated pattern, or it can embrace variation, using certain key markers such as form or color to create visual movement. Designers commonly use 3 strategies to achieve rhythm: repetition, repeating elements like shapes, colors, or lines in a consistent way. Think of a series of identical light fixtures lining a hallway. Alternation, a type of patterning that alternates 2 or more contrasting elements. For example, alternating dark and light tiles on a floor. Gradation, creating progression by making small, gradual changes. For instance, shifting a wall color from blue to purple to red, or arranging furniture from small to large to guide the eye. Through these methods, rhythm keeps a space from feeling static and gives it flow, energy, and visual interest. The elements most often used to create rhythm are pattern, form, color, and light. But once you've introduced movement into a design, the next question is, where should the eye go first? This leads us directly into the next principle: hierarchy. Hierarchy establishes a sense of order and importance. It directs attention to focal points and helps communicate what matters most in a design. Let's take a closer look at how hierarchy organizes visual storytelling in interior spaces. Now, let's move into the principle of hierarchy. Hierarchy is all about focus. It determines which areas of a design draw the eye first and how the viewer's attention flows through a space. For hierarchy to exist, certain objects or surfaces must stand out from the rest, creating a clear visual order. Designers establish hierarchy in 2 main ways: contrast and position. Contrast can be achieved by varying form, scale, color, light, pattern, or texture. For example, a large, brightly colored painting on a neutral wall will naturally command attention. Contrast is best described through levels. The dominant element grabs the greatest attention immediately. The subdominant element supports the dominant feature and is noticed next. The subordinate elements are quieter details, discovered last on closer inspection. Position also plays a key role. Placing an element at the center of a design scheme, at a higher level in a space, or in a location visible from multiple viewpoints establishes importance and draws the eye. As designs grow more complex, multiple levels of hierarchy can exist, creating richness, depth, and nuance. This allows a space to unfold gradually, giving users new visual experiences as they move through it. But while hierarchy organizes attention and emphasizes what matters most, design cannot thrive on contrast and focal points alone. The final principle, unity, is what ties everything together. Unity ensures that all the elements and principles we've discussed work in harmony, creating a design that feels complete and cohesive. Our final principle of design is unity. Unity encompasses all of the other design principles, and by extension, all of the elements of design as well. It's the principle that holds everything together, creating a design that feels complete and cohesive. Without unity, a space can feel disconnected, like a collection of parts instead of a whole. Designers often achieve unity through consistency, using repeating forms, colors, or patterns throughout a space. But unity doesn't mean everything should be the same. In fact, introducing variety is important to keep a design from feeling dull or stagnant. The key is balance, enough consistency to feel harmonious, with just the right amount of variety to maintain interest. One of the strongest ways to achieve unity is through the use of a concept, an overarching idea that guides both functional and aesthetic decisions. A clear concept gives direction, ensures consistency, and creates a sense of purpose within the design. So, unity is the thread that ties together proportion, balance, rhythm, and hierarchy into one cohesive whole. Now that we've finished exploring both the elements and principles of design, let's pause for a moment and review the keywords from this chapter. These terms will be important to remember as we continue building our design foundation. Now that we've explored the elements and principles of design, let's go over the keywords from this chapter. These terms will not only help you understand the concepts, but they'll also give you the vocabulary you need to communicate like a designer. Here are the definitions. Alternation, a type of rhythm created by alternating two or more contrasting elements in a repeated sequence. Asymmetry, balance achieved without identical halves, relies on visual weight rather than mirror image repetition. Balance, the distribution of visual weight to create equilibrium in a design. Chroma, the intensity or saturation of a color. Color, an element of design defined by hue, value, and chroma. Contrast, difference in form, color, texture, or light that creates emphasis. Design thinking, a problem-solving process that includes empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing. Dominant, the most visually important element in a design. What grabs attention first? Elements of design, the building blocks, form, pattern, texture, color, light, and scale. Empathize, the first step of design thinking, understanding the user's needs and experiences. Failure, part of the iterative design process. Testing that doesn't work can guide improvement. Form, the shape and structure of an object or space. Gradation, rhythm created by gradual changes, such as shifting color or size step by step. Hierarchy, the organization of design elements to establish importance and guide the eye. Hue, the category of color, such as red, blue, yellow. Ideate, the brainstorming phase of design thinking where multiple solutions are generated. Iteration, repeating and refining design solutions through multiple versions. Light makes all other elements visible, influences mood, safety, and function. Line, a path created by a moving point, can define shape, direction, or emphasis. Mass, the solid appearing volume or weight of a form. Negative space, empty or open space around forms and objects. Node, a point of focus or intersection within a design, often guiding circulation. Organizing lines, visual lines that guide structure, order, or movement in a design. Pattern, a repeated decorative or structural motif that adds rhythm or guides the eye. Plane, a flat two-dimensional surface in space. Point, the simplest design element, a single mark in space. Position, the placement of an element within a design that establishes importance or hierarchy. Positive space, the filled or occupied areas in a design. Principles of design, the rules that guide how elements are arranged. Proportion, balance, rhythm, hierarchy, and unity. Problem definition, clearly identifying the challenge or need being addressed in design thinking. Proportion, the size relationship between parts of a design and the whole. Prototyping, creating a model or sample to test design ideas. Radial, balance achieved when elements radiate out from a central point. Repetition, rhythm created by repeating the same element over and over. Rhythm, the sense of movement created through repetition, alternation, or gradation. Scale, the size of an object or space compared to an accepted standard, often the human body. Space, the area between and around objects, can be positive or negative. Subdominant, elements that support the dominant feature noticed after the focal point. Subordinate, the smallest details in a hierarchy noticed last after dominant and subdominant. Symmetry, balance created with identical elements mirrored across an axis. Testing, the final step of design thinking, evaluating whether a solution works. Texture, the surface quality of a material, either tactile, felt, or visual, seen. Unity, the principle that ties all elements and principles into a cohesive whole. Value, the lightness or darkness of a color. Volume, the three-dimensional space an object occupies. That's a lot of vocabulary, but don't worry, you don't have to memorize it all at once. A full list of these words is included at the end of this chapter, so you can study them at your own pace. Be sure to review them carefully, because they may show up on a quiz or exam. And more importantly, they'll give you the professional language you need as a designer. All right, now that we've gone through each of the elements and principles of design, let's bring it all together in one big picture. The elements are our ingredients, the raw materials we use to create spaces. To help you remember them, think of our mnemonic: fresh pasta tastes creamy, light and saucy. F for form, P for pattern, T for texture, C for color, L for light, S for scale. These are the building blocks. They give us the shapes, textures, colors, and proportions that make up a space. But ingredients alone don't make a full meal. You need recipes and rules. That's where the principles of design come in. They guide how we put those elements together. Our mnemonic for these is: perfect burgers require healthy utensils. P for proportion, B for balance, R for rhythm, H for hierarchy, U for unity. The principles are what bring order, harmony, and direction to a design. They tell us how to use our ingredients to make something functional, beautiful, and complete. Here's the takeaway. The elements are the what, the pieces of design. The principles are the how, the rules that bring those pieces together into a cohesive whole. And one last reminder, all of this, the elements, the principles, the vocabulary, will show up on quizzes and exams. These aren't just terms to memorize, they're the foundation of how we think, talk, and work as designers. The more you practice with them, the more natural they'll become. So keep those mnemonics in mind, study your keywords at the end of the chapter, and remember, when you understand the elements and principles, you're holding the blueprint to every great design. Thank you all for watching. This has been our overview of the elements and principles of design. I hope this video helps you review, study, and connect the ideas we've been learning in class. Remember, these concepts are the foundation of design, and they will show up on quizzes and exams. So keep practicing with the mnemonics and vocabulary. I'll see you in the next lesson. Until then, keep designing, keep creating, and keep looking at the world through a designer's eye.